British Columbia, the News Hour with Robin Stickley.
Hi there, good evening on a Sunday. Thanks so much for joining us. And we begin tonight with breaking political news and the answer to a key question that surfaced when Premier Gordon Campbell suddenly resigned earlier this month. Would Surrey Mayor Dianne Watts throw her hat in the ring for the BC Liberal leadership race? Well, a recent poll shows 65% of British Columbians are in favor of her taking a run at the province's top job. So, will she or won't she? Tonight, Dianne Watts reveals her very personal decision in an exclusive sit-down interview with Global's Jazz Joe Hall.
I am honored to be your next mayor.
For the past 5 years, Surrey Mayor Dianne Watts has been a fixture in Vancouver civic politics. Her moderate approach has won her many supporters. Ever since Gordon Campbell announced he was stepping down as BC Liberal leader, the drumbeat for Watts to enter provincial politics has grown louder. She has been pushed by many to run.
Well, it certainly has been overwhelming. I have to say that. The amount of letters and messages and emails that I've received are really very, very flattering.
Speaking exclusively to Global Television, Watts says she's made a decision. So I guess the question that everybody is asking, are you going to run for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party?
I'm not. No, I'm not. And there's a number of reasons for that. And like I said, I had made that decision in July. And going through the process, I came to a number of decisions that just reconfirmed what I had thought about in July.
Watts says her decision not to run was based on the impact it would have on her family, and that her job as mayor isn't done. In the next 2 years, major multi-million-dollar developments will begin in Surrey.
So when you go through that process, when you create that environment in the city, I think it's incumbent upon me as the mayor and our council to continue with that work.
With Carol Taylor maintaining she won't run, the frontrunners are all Liberal cabinet ministers: Kevin Falcon, Mike DeYoung, George Abbott, and Rich Coleman. It's also a party that's been run by Campbell loyalists for 17 years, meaning an outsider will have a tough time making dramatic changes. It's a point Watts alluded to.
When you've got the relationships that have been made around the cabinet table, you've got the decision-making process that's been undertaken, and regardless of the decisions, good decisions, bad, it's just around the decision-making process. So for someone to come in and make it their own when they haven't participated in that is a stretch, and for me it is a stretch as well.
Whoever wins, Watts says, they'll have to make changes to the reviled HST. Since she's not running, she certainly has her favorite.
Well, I have to say it's very unfortunate that Carol Taylor isn't going to run. I think everyone would have gotten behind her 150%, including myself. I have a lot of respect for her. And I think it just speaks to the fact that the political environment in British Columbia is not conducive to attracting people of her caliber, John Furlong, and many others that have sat there and said, you know what, we're not going to do it. There's no compelling reason why we would want to step into that environment. And so around the cabinet table, I don't know who's going to be running, but I wish them all the very best of luck.
All right, joining me now for reaction to the decision made by Dianne Watts tonight, Keith Baldry in Victoria. Keith, really, you called this last night on the News Hour, so obviously this one was no big surprise to you.
No, no real surprise here, Robin. First of all, I didn't think she was going to run, apart from the reasons she provided in our story, which are quite valid ones, of course. The basic fact is in politics, it's very hard, very difficult for an outsider to win the leadership of a political party when you've got other potentially viable candidates. It very seldom happens. So Dianne Watts has no history in the BC Liberal Party. She's not even a member, as far as I know. Doesn't have a lot of those connections with the people who are there, who are actually going to be voting to decide the next leader. This is not a general election. The choice of the next leader of the BC Liberal Party is in the hands of a relatively small number of people who belong to the BC Liberal Party. Dianne Watts doesn't have a lot of history with them, so that's the big reason why I thought she wasn't going to make the jump, and she ultimately decided not to.
All right, let's talk about the other factor here, or one of them anyway, which is money. How much are we talking about here? How much can the candidates themselves actually spend?
Yeah, a lot of money. This is potentially, well, it probably is going to be the most expensive and in terms of spending leadership race in the history of BC, because the BC Liberal executive yesterday set two limits. First of all, it's going to cost each candidate $25,000 just to register as a leadership candidate. Secondly, the spending cap for each candidate is at $450,000. So almost $500,000 is what each candidate can spend. Now, in a general election, that's not a lot of money. Political parties can spend more than $6 million, $7 million in this province in a general provincial election. Leadership race is something completely different. We don't see a lot of them in this province. The BC Liberals haven't been through one, of course, in 17 years, and the amount of money spent back then is pales in significance in comparison to what it could be potentially spent this time. So almost $500,000 per candidate. That's a lot of money. The upsides, though, we're going to see, because they have to disclose this, any money they get to Elections BC. We'll be able to see who is contributing to which candidate's campaign. Again, that's another first in BC.
Okay, so tonight we know that Watts is taking herself out of the game, but the playing field here is still completely unknown. When will we finally see someone put their hat into the ring here?
Yeah, good question. Doesn't anybody want this job? I still think we're still a few days away from seeing anybody formally jump into the race. They've got to get that $25,000 together to register with the BC Liberal Party to become a candidate. Secondly, people are still wondering, when is the date? When are they going to actually choose a leader? They're going to meet February 12th in a constitutional policy convention to ratify the proposed voting procedure decided upon by the party executive yesterday. But the date to choose a leader will be sometime after that. And I think candidates are still looking for some clues out there exactly how much longer they're going to be looking at Gordon Campbell remaining in office and how much longer it would take for them to actually campaign to succeed him in his job.
All right, Keith Baldry, thanks very much for your perspective in Victoria tonight.